It is the 27th meeting of the No Name Cinema Society. Welcome back, and look at these hot new graphics. I'm sorry to yell, but I'm so excited. We're moving up in the world. I can't believe we've done 27 episodes, and here we are with this. We're got these awesome new graphics. If you look very carefully, you can see the poster of our movie for discussion tonight, which of course is Keanu. Hi, my name is Jonathan Betzler. I am one of the hosts for the evening for the No Name Cinema Society. I'm very excited about our 27th meeting, if you will. And tonight, as you know, we're going to talk about the film Keanu, which came out this weekend. And it's kind of fun because one thing that used to be very popular in movies is the concept of the comedy team. Whether it's you look at Marx Brothers is the pinnacle, Abbott and Costello, the Three Stooges, the Ritz Brothers, Bing Crosby and Bob Hope in the Road movies, and even as recently as Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor in something like Stir Crazy or See No Evil, Hear No Evil. They did a series of movies together. We have our own comedy team that hosts with me today. And first, let's start. He doesn't have his graphic up, but that's okay. Let's start with our own Stan Laurel. There is his graphic, just in time. Stan Laurel, also known as Dave Joseph, also known as Drunk Davey. Will you do me a Laurel cry, Davey?
No, you know what I am? I am totally the Dean Martin to your Jerry Lewis.
Well, I don't know. Let's ask our own Hardy here. Oliver Hardy, also known as J Money. J Money, do you know the line for Hardy?
No. What's the line for Hardy?
Well, your line here was supposed to be, "This is another fine mess you've gotten us into." So you missed your cue, and my joke is ruined. But that's okay. Let me start, and Davey, I'm going to have you read this off to everybody. The whole schedule for the evening. It's right here. So Davey, why don't you read that to the nice folks while I set up the next photo?
All right, yeah. So we're going to do the new release like now. That's Keanu. At 8:30, it's going to be the Indie Spotlight, which is The Debt. The classic feature is going to be The Lion in Winter at 9, and the sound off will be at 10. All these times are Eastern. Back out 3 hours for the West Coast, or wherever you're at. Yeah. Anyway.
And tonight we got Davey's Diatribe, and tonight's sound off is going to be focused on 2015 in many ways, because after we did our year-end review, there was a lot of questions and things of that nature regarding our 2015 end-of-year review, so we're going to be following up on a lot of those things, including our top 5 films that we reviewed on this show, since so little of them made our top 10 list. But as Davey said, right now it's about Keanu, so let's start with our summary. This is Key and Peele here playing cousins Rel and Clarence, who they come across a super cute cat, whom they dub Keanu, and after having him for a couple weeks, he gets stolen. They are determined to retrieve their beloved pet, and their investigation leads them to a group of dangerous drug dealers, which forces the straight-laced duo to pose as the scariest gangsters in all of Los Angeles, whom they happen to resemble. Now, just in fairness to all, what's the word I'm looking for? To divulge everything, in all candor, I am not super familiar with Key and Peele, generally speaking. I've seen like clips here and there on YouTube of their show, but I've never sat down and watched a whole show back when they had a show on Comedy Central. I think it was just this year they stopped doing it. So, are you guys Key and Peele people?
I am now.
Well then, bury the lead, why don't you? J Money, have you ever seen the show?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a complete season. I've seen shows from different seasons, and I've seen a lot of clips online, so I'm, relatively familiar.
All right, so Davey already ruined it, so we'll start with him for opening thoughts. It sounds like you're a fan, Davey.
I thought it was pretty funny. I really enjoyed it a lot.
And J Money.
Comedy's hard. I think that. You're just talking about Key and Peele. Like I went in with expectations, and I feel like it could have and should have been funnier.
That's interesting. I went with some friends, and you might have seen the photos on Twitter. And my friend loved it. he thought it was hilarious, and you'd be surprised to learn that I also kind of enjoyed it. And I want to explore what J Money was saying. I think it was successful in what it was trying to be, and that's where I want to start, because I think there was two things it was looking to spoof, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. One is movie stereotypes, and the other is racial stereotypes. And I think both of those were done fairly successfully. How do you guys feel about that first statement?
Spot on.
Spot on. Davy Joe's got my back. J Money, do you disagree?
Well, I agree with half of it. I mean, I think that you're right about what they were, trying to go after. I think that they could have gone after it harder, I guess is what I would say.
Okay, can you elaborate on that?
I think that they are very well qualified to talk about this, talk about the disconnect between, like, African-American stereotypes in media versus what the average African-American male specifically might just deal with on a daily basis. And I feel like they never really could get past just the kind of surface-level joke about that. I really wanted there to be a little bit more depth and discussion in some way in this movie, except it just felt like the same thing over and over. But let's get back.
You felt like it was safe.
Yeah, I did feel like it was very safe. I think that's really what it comes down to.
Interesting. I mean, I can see that, but I mean, at the same time, I felt like there were several times where they went a lot further than I thought they were going to. I think that, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple times where I expected them to hold back, and they didn't. They went full throttle, and especially when it comes to the violence, which is something that I have mixed feelings about. I also think that in terms of the screenplay, there was a number of plot twists where I was sort of, and I don't want to give too much away, but there's several times I was surprised by something, because my expectations are based on previous silly spoofs and comedies. Not that this is a spoof in the way of Naked Gun, but I had a set of expectations that I actually thought it was going to be safer. Let's put it that way. David Joe, where are you on this?
No, I thought that it was pretty shocking at times. I won't get into the details because I think it's kind of a spoiler, but there's a celebrity cameo and kind of what happens there kind of surprised me a little bit.
I couldn't find any pictures of that moment, but that definitely stuck out in my mind.
But that, it's good that you didn't, because I think that it's kind of fun for people to just be kind of surprised by that in the film. But I can see what you're saying, where there are parts of it where it goes a little further than you're expecting. You're like, whoa, wow, they really did that.
Yeah. But to J Money's point, is there at all a thought as maybe that, especially in this first effort, they were holding back, or they needed to be safe to some degree? Because here's the thing that occurred to me: like, I think they addressed the racial stereotypes in a very funny way, and there were times, but I was also thinking it's relatively unoffensive, like, and maybe that, were you looking for something that was more borderline offensive? Because it seemed like funny and spot on, but at the same time, unoffensive, and therefore potentially more marketable, or certainly more palatable to a larger group, myself included. Did you want them to be more offensive? Am I picking at something that might be what your issue is?
You're asking me if I think they should be more offensive? Like they should be more offensive? Is that what you're?
Well, I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, like, I guess my question, like you said, they didn't go far enough, and I don't know about that. I mean, like, I was surprised at how far they went, again, in terms of some of the violence and things like that, because normally in comedies it's not, in comedies like this that doesn't happen as much. But I also was thinking that maybe it was, it occurred to me that as much as they talked about race and dealt with race, it wasn't that offensive in any way to anyone, and I'm wondering if them holding it back and trying to keep it relatively unoffensive made it feel safe to you.
No, it wasn't that. I mean, I don't think that you have to be offensive to really talk about the idea of this in depth. I think, and again, I'll go back and say I'm not the greatest scholar in Key and Peele in general, but the majority of their humor is kind of derived from this idea of code switching, of the disconnect between these different expectations for a lot of times African American masculinity and, like, people who are real. ultimately. And I feel like this movie, certainly that was the core of it, but it felt like they were hitting the same joke about it over and over and over again. And I guess what I wanted to see was more depth about that idea, as opposed to them just constantly playing off
Now,
how they were
when you
fish out
say
of water.
depth, can you think of like an example of a comedy that reached those levels of depth?
Off
You know
the
what I'm
top of my
saying?
head, I think that I can't. I'm terrible at thinking of things off the top of my head like that.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I mean, like, like you asked about depth, but I also think that they're trying to remain funny, so it's like a difficult balance. I'm almost impressed that they had as much they remained funny and were as edgy as they were. Like it almost seemed impressive what they accomplished.
I would say that I think that there might have been more material to mine than simply that one basic premise, which is what they kind of hit over and over and over again on the head, which is funny in and of itself. It's just that I kind of wanted to see them.
But did you think there was also like this aping of movie stereotypes and action movies as well? I mean, wasn't that part of it?
Yes and no. In a lot of ways, I feel like they were trying to accomplish too much by pulling all that into this. I mean, I think that I didn't feel like their combination of like a serious action element or a serious quote unquote romance element in some of the stuff felt in combination with the comedy, it felt like it was at odds with the comedy to me. It felt like it was kind of there to sort of pull the movie together in a more rounded way, but it didn't quite mesh for me personally. But
yeah. Okay. I mean, I agree with you about the romance part of it. I could have gone without that, but I didn't mind it. Let's a couple different directions to go in now, and and like many times, like we've sort of the things that you say touch on a number of things I want to talk about all at once, and so let me save one thing for later, and let's go back to this concept of the movie stereotype thing, which you think was like only a part of it, and I think it's actually like a big half of it. I think Davey agrees with me.
No, let me clarify. I don't think it was only a part of it. I think it was really heavy-handed throughout the entire movie. I'm just saying that there were parts of the movie that devoted itself to purely action, parts of it that devoted itself purely to romance, parts of it that devoted itself purely to morality in a certain way that was devoid of comedy. And I would have rather seen everything tied together in a way. But back to your point, I mean, yes, this movie was about movies as much as anything else, and that is funny in and of itself. But
right, and I mean, like, I think that the concept of the idea of cat and MacGuffin, all the cat photos and the calendar, and also the music by Steve Jablonsky, I thought was, and Steve Jablonsky is normally like one of these action movie composers, like Transformers and such, and it sounded like a lot of previous Steve Jablonsky scores, and I don't know if he was making fun of himself or I'm assuming he was in on the joke. But I mean, it was perfect. I thought, like all the details added up in a way that I think really led to, added to the parody element of these movies. And another example here is one of the calendar entries. They did several different movie calendar entries, and this is one of them. And these calendars are going to sell, don't you think, Davey?
Absolutely.
Are they actually going to release them? Because they should. They should really totally.
Yeah, I mean, I have to assume that they would. Davey, where are you in this on all this that J Money's saying before I make my last?
I mean, I definitely think to say that it was heavy-handed, I think is probably accurate. They definitely played off the whole slow-mo thing and kind of you're right with the music.
Well, I mean, I think that's all part of the scheme. I mean,
yeah.
It seems to fit within the genre. I wouldn't refer to it as heavy-handed in a bad way.
Well, it's been done before. I didn't mind it at all, but it's definitely something that I've seen in other movies. I think Spy did some of that stuff too, and that's cool. I'm not like I said, I really like the movie a lot. But I can see maybe someone kind of being a little tired of that particular line. But I didn't think it. I thought there was other stuff going on, other funny things at the same time. So it didn't bother me. And it is funny.
I was looking at Davey for backup, and that was the worst. You cannot be my wingman anymore. That was the worst packing up I've ever had.
I mean, I'm not a miracle worker.
Anyway, Is J Money there? Oh, there he is. He's okay. So let's go to this other thing that you were talking about in terms of digging deeper. And one thing that I think that surprised me and I thought was very kind of important about this movie, and I think it's going to be glossed over. And obviously, we have to be very careful about how we approach this. But the very ending, I think, is kind of important from a social issue point of view. And the very, very ending, meaning that I think in a lot of comedies, given the things that they've done, but like essentially they're good guys. I guess it's interesting that they make the point about, because I worry in the movie about the violence was funny and it was appropriate for what they were trying to do, but it did still feel glamorized at times, so I kind of had mixed feelings about it. But at the same time, there was potential consequences.
Yep. It reminded me of Criminal, where they just kind of just glossed over all that stuff at the end, like, oh, none of that stuff actually happened. Whereas here they did at least address it.
Oh, well, I think that's an important message to their audience too, because here this is comedy and the audience is glamorized, and they're like, whoa, wait, and I think that little twist, that I didn't expect, I think is important in the grander scheme of things, as far as and it raised this movie a notch to me.
It's funny because I agree with everything you just said, and when it started to happen, I was like, oh god, the movie should really end now. But it didn't, and that was fine. Like it was actually, I thought they were about to annoy me, and it worked out. It was fine. But
J Money, again, we're trying to tiptoe around it, but how did you feel about that particular moment?
No, I am in the opposite camp here. I thought it felt kind of forced, and ultimately, I guess it adds to my sentiment about how I felt like the movie played it too safe. To me, that last-minute sort of tack-on of resolution didn't really fit with the rest of the timbre of the movie, and it felt like it was a little too cheesy, almost in a sense, for the rest of the movie.
No, I agree it didn't fit with the timbre of the movie, but I think that was almost purposeful. It was almost like, okay, reality check now. I think it was an important.
But it wasn't any more realistic.
What's that?
But it really wasn't any more realistic.
Well, the fact that the amount of time, yeah, certainly yeah, but it's something. You know what I mean? Because here's the thing. Again, I feel like most similar comedies, there wouldn't have been anything. Do you disagree with that?
No, I don't disagree that there might not have been anything in other similar comedies. I don't think that I feel like what happened in this movie added to it for me. If anything, I think it detracted from it for me. So.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
As much as I've been defending the movie, I do have a number of issues with it that I had. So here's some of the flaws that I had with it. Many of them were of a technical nature. One being, I think that there was a number of times when the focus appeared soft, and it happened at enough different points in the movie, like far apart from one another, that it did not appear to me to be a projector issue. And it seemed like sloppy soft, not like intentionally buzzing the actor, a little bit. It seemed like they just like didn't have any other footage, or it was the best take performance-wise, and they didn't care about the focus. It bothered me a little bit. I also felt like some of the jokes were overexplained. I wish they were you relied on visual humor. One example. Uh-oh, that's our timer. One example is when they go to the club, and the club has a funny name. When they first get to the club, like we see the name and it's funny, and then they're like, oh, that's unfortunate, and like it's a small thing, but they didn't need it. You know what I mean? Like it almost ruined the joke. It's like explaining the joke.
Right. That's how I feel about a lot of the humor in this, unfortunately.
Okay, well, I felt that a couple of times. That's just one example. The other thing is I felt like there was an opportunity for a lot of stuff going on here when there's a sequence when Kia is drugged, and that did not have the impact. I feel like there was a lot of potential there, and that was a real disappointing sequence.
Yeah, I agree.
David, do you disagree with anything I said?
I liked the drugged sequence. I thought that was funny. I do. I
Go
have a
ahead.
quick question for you about the focus. I know that the budget on this was really low, and I think they spent 15 million on it. You think that?
But I mean, like my baby sister can keep focus. I mean, like I don't think that's
Yeah, I guess
that's oversimplifying it. But you do it again if it's out of focus. You know what I mean?
okay. Yeah, that's the question. Is like is it something that in another movie they would have gone back and reshot it after they realized that, but they just didn't have
I
the.
don't think it's an excuse. I mean, like I work on much lower budget stuff, and we manage to keep focus. It's not like these buzzes were on really hard racks. Like sometimes if a character's moving, and the camera's not, or even if the camera is, like there are moments that focus can be difficult, and sometimes that's forgiven, but not in those moments.
Gotcha.
And certainly this budget movie, that's not an excuse. It's not like it's $1 million movie. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So we've got to wrap up, but I mean, like, to J Money's point, the other thing I did want to say is, like, I enjoyed the movie, but I'm not going to put it in the annals of comedy, the pantheon of comedies. And maybe there was an expectation issue for you too, J Money, because I didn't know what to expect. I actually maybe had lower expectations.
I think there definitely was, and I also want to clarify. I laughed at this movie. I didn't dislike this movie. I just thought it could have been funnier, unfortunately. But I also thought it was funny.
I feel that too to some degree. Like, I mean, I laughed. I didn't laugh. It wasn't 40-year-old virgin laughing. It wasn't. There's something about Mary laughing. You know what I mean? It wasn't Naked Gun laughing where it just like hurts my side. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't that kind of movie.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was funny. It wasn't hilarious. Like that's how I would describe it.
That's fair.
So we actually agree on that.
Uh-oh.
You're there.
I'm here.
Okay, we're back.
Yeah. Scary moment is I'm about to close down anyway. It didn't really matter. All right, so we got a full night ahead. We got our Indie Spotlight coming up, and our Indie Spotlight is a movie from 2011. That's been our thing. We're doing indies from 2011. It's called The Den and Jessica Chastain. And let's see. You know what I can't seem to find is the new movie for next week. Where is that?
Oh, you know what? Shoot, that might not actually be there.
Do I not have it?
That's a possibility.
I was promised that you were going to tell me.
That's right. Well, I will tell you, but I don't have a graphic to back it up. All right, so Dead is coming up in about 7 minutes. Our next current feature, our next new release, we're going to do May 23rd at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and we're doing The Nice Guys, starring Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. Remember now, Davy Joe, is your idea?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
Okay.
All right, so he's happy again. He was like, "What's the movie? I can't remember. Why aren't we doing X-Men?" That was his rant, and I'm like, "You're just gonna have to wait to see what the movie is because I knew he'd be happy." So The Nice Guys is happening on May 23rd. That's our next new release. But in the meantime, our evening continues with our Indie Spotlight, and it's The Debt, and that's coming up in 6 minutes. And we'll see you shortly.